Ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to be doing a spoiler talk for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. If you want to see my full spoiler-free review, definitely go check that out. I kind of just went over the positives and negatives and a full rating for the film. But for the spoiler talks, we just kind of talk about the things that we couldn't talk about in the full review. And in this case, there's only really a couple things I want to talk about. My throat is absolutely killing me because I've been a bit sick lately, so I'm going to try to keep this as short as I can. The first and main thing I wanted to talk about is honestly the character deaths and, well, the lack thereof. So I actually did not include that in my negatives, where in a lot of cases, I do include that, where like movies don't kill off certain characters, because I do feel like, you know, certain movies should have character deaths to make sure the stakes are as high as they can be. And before watching this movie, not only was I pretty certain that at least one of the Guardians were going to die, but I also just kind of wanted one of them to, maybe even two of them. Like, I actually wanted to see that. I thought it would add a lot to the story. And like I said, it would add the stakes, it would be very emotional, and I was really hoping to see that. But after watching the movie and not having any of those characters die, I'm actually completely okay and actually happy about that. And I think the only reason why that's the case is because James Gunn did such a great job of making the stakes already feel so high in the film, where you did feel like someone was gonna die every second, and also did make the movie very emotional, even without killing anybody off. And he even went so far as to have a couple different moments in the film where you thought someone was going to die, to the point where you got all the emotions out of you. Like, you got the same emotions that you would have if they actually did die, but then they didn't. The first time that happened for me was Rocket Raccoon in the very beginning of the film, when he was attacked by Adam Warlock. And honestly, I was kind of worried even in the first 10 minutes. I was like, are they about to do that? And then I started thinking, well, he was in the trailers and other scenes, so maybe they won't kill him off. But then I was like, oh, they've fooled us before with trailers. They can probably do that again. So I was genuinely worried, and it started to bring some emotion out of me. And then later on in the film, you kind of have a similar thing with Rocket, where, you know, he's on the table and you know, Star-Lord's there and Gamora's there, and they're really trying to help him. He's like screaming and stuff. It's such a great scene. And you get all of the emotion from that, even though he doesn't end up dying. There was even that scene with the little dream sequence where he's kind of talking to his other friends that he, you know, his friends from the past that were killed by the High Evolutionary. And they were like saying, do you want to come with us? Or he was asking if he can come with them to heaven. And then, you know, she was kind of like saying like, yes, it's okay. And that scene was probably the most emotional scene in the movie. But then she was like, I think it was Lila, she was like, no, it's not your time yet. So you were able to get all that emotion even without Rocket dying. And that is why I'm okay with it not happening, because it was still a very emotional movie. It still hit you, it still had the stakes, but you didn't have to kill off the people. I think that's the thing that's more important, right? Because you go to any other movie, I'm not going to go into specifics, but there's some other comic book movies that came out recently where they kind of play around with certain characters dying. Sometimes they'll fool you about it. Sometimes, you know, it like kind of look like they will die and then they don't die. And I've always kept saying, like, I actually want them to start killing off some more people to kind of raise the stakes a little bit. And these movies never really feel like they have stakes a lot of the time. But this is one where I do feel like it did. And when it does feel like it has stakes and when it does have emotion, then I don't need the character deaths. I don't need them. It only is really required if you can't give me those emotions and those stakes. Killing off characters is just one way to have those things, but there's other ways to do it. And I think James Gunn was able to find those ways, which again is why I was okay with it. The next time it happened was actually one time it happened with Drax. He was shot in that one scene when they had some action scene where he was shot, and I honestly thought he was about to die. But then when I really thought a character was going to die, and it did bring a lot of emotion out of me, that was when Star-Lord at the very end. I thought he was done for. I thought it was over. I thought it was a really interesting callback to the first two films, because in the first one, he saved Gamora when she was floating out in space, and he put the little suit on her. Then the second one, Yondu saved him when he was floating out, so I thought I was going to try to do that again, but this time it was going to be him actually dying. And they made it really seem like he was dead. It was like, it was game over. I was like, oh my god, he's dead. And yeah, I was crying. It was emotional, but Adam Warlock saves him. And I was okay with that, because again, you still felt the stakes, you still felt the emotion the whole way through this film. And then I look back at it and I'm like, well, if they were to have killed off someone, would the movie be able to have that somewhat happy ending that it did? It was a bittersweet ending in the fact that like a lot of them left and kind of split up, but none of them died, so it was happy in that sense. But like, let's say Star-Lord did die there, you couldn't have that happy scene. It would have to have an emotional close, like a funeral scene or something, and then you couldn't have that kind of like upbeat ending that they probably wanted to have for these characters. And especially after such an emotional and dark movie, I think having it end on a high note is probably for the best for your audience. Of course, there were character deaths, like I said, you had Rocket's friends dying in that one scene in the flashback, and of course you had the main villain, and I believe Adam Warlock's mom, which I don't know if she's like technically his mom, but you know what I mean. I think she was killed. I honestly couldn't really tell in that scene, but possible she was. But in terms of the main Guardians, none of them were killed. Like, not even a side one. Like, I thought maybe Sean Gunn's character, I forget his name, I thought maybe he was gonna die, but nope. And I was thinking maybe Mantis, which she is part of the Guardians at this point, but I was thinking maybe her, but nope. So I don't know. I loved how I thought it was going to be literally any of them. I thought it could have been any of them, but it wasn't, which might have been the more surprising thing, to be honest. If they just killed off Drax or Rocket, it probably would have been less surprising than actually killing off no one. I will say, although before seeing the movie I was expecting at least one character to die, there was one thing I saw on Twitter like a couple days before watching the movie, actually just like a day before watching the movie, and I was kind of pissed about this because I despise when people give indirect spoilers on Twitter. They do it so frequently, man. People are so bad at not spoiling things, it's hilarious. Like, a lot of people think that the only type of spoiler there is when you directly say a character death. Like, that's the only spoiler. No, anything about the plot, even if it's indirect, is a spoiler in my opinion. And some people just aren't very careful with it. You can tell they're not purposefully trying to spoil it, but there are some people who just, they don't word things correctly, is what I'm saying. So for example, a lot of people saw it early, and I saw a lot of conversation on Twitter about the idea of movies not needing to kill off main characters for it to still feel very impactful, which, like I said, is something I agree with. I've been talking about that in this whole video. But when I saw that, I was like, well, they're obviously talking about Guardians of the Galaxy, because that's what everyone's talking about right now. And I was like, well, shit, did that just spoil that no one's gonna die? So then I was thinking about that while watching the movie, and I was like, well, fuck, I guess maybe no one's gonna die then. But I don't know, part of me was also thinking it's still possible, so it was kind of like a, half and half thing. Like, I felt like someone would die based on what the story was leading to, but then at the same time I was like, well, those tweets though, I don't know. And then just today I was on Twitter, and obviously I've already seen the movie now, so it doesn't matter for me, but I was seeing other people, they're just blatantly saying shit. Now, they don't think it's a spoiler somehow. Like, they literally don't. Some guy was straight up like, nobody dies in this movie. And then people were like, yo, you're spoiling the movie. And then he was like, no, I'm not spoiling it. Like, what do you mean you're not spoiling it? You're just saying it right there. And when it comes to the High Evolutionary and his death, I absolutely loved that scene. That was such a cool moment, because that's probably the most gore we've ever seen from Marvel, like, ever. I can't think of a single other, well, like MCU, not like Marvel as a whole, because obviously we've seen more gore in like Logan and such, but in terms of the MCU, without a doubt the most we've seen. And I was shocked. I was like, wow, don't take your kids to see this, because holy shit. Like, they ripped off his face. I already thought that was pretty brutal in and of itself, but then they show it. I was not expecting them to show it. It was probably the most surprising MCU moment I've seen in a long time. Like, it really was surprising. I was like, oh my god, they're showing that? And it looked really damn cool. I was like, oh, this is awesome. And there's a couple other things like that, like Nebula. There's so many scenes where she's getting messed up and her neck's like twitched around, and like, it's just like, it's a lot of body horror, you know what I mean? I wasn't expecting to see that in an MCU film. There's also a lot of like twisted creations that the High Evolutionary made with different animals, and it's horrifying, it's awful, but it does look pretty cool the way they were able to do that. Like the war pig, that like giant ass pig with like the giant robot arm and stuff, like some cool stuff, to be honest. Like, this had a lot of creativity behind it, and I think James Gunn is usually pretty good at the creative aspects of filmmaking, obviously. And honestly, the last thing I want to talk about that's spoiler related is the after credit scene, and basically just what's to come in the future for the Guardians. So we had two after credit scenes. The first one They're both kind of like not the best after credit scenes, to be honest, but the first one was just kind of showing the new Guardians of the Galaxy. It was just Rocket, Adam Warlock, Sean Gunn's character. Is his name Kraglin? His name might be Kraglin. I might be completely wrong about that. Hold on, I'm gonna look it up. I'm right, it is Kraglin. Okay, Kraglin, cool. So he's there, Groot's there, I think there's someone else there too. And yeah, that seems like it's the new Guardians of the Galaxy. And I don't think it really means much for us because I don't expect to see them again in their own film. But I don't think we're never going to see them again. I do think they will show up again in the Avengers films, at least for Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. Actually, no, at least for Secret Wars. Maybe not Kang Dynasty. Probably Secret Wars, though. I definitely expect to see those Guardians back for that. Is it going to be all the Guardians, the other ones as well? Probably not the others, except for Star-Lord, because they did make that second after credit scene, and then they say the legendary Star-Lord will return, which surprised me because I was like, out of all of them, they say Star-Lord. So that made me think, are we going to get a Star-Lord solo project, or is he just going to return himself in Secret Wars? Maybe. I don't know, because it's a little weird. Like, if he's going to still be in movies, why not just have him be with the rest of the Guardians? Like, obviously, leaving Gamora out of it's fine. That makes sense. She had her ending, and even the actress said she doesn't really think she wants to return, which I hate how she said that before the movie came out. I hate when press, cover that type of stuff, and actors and actresses and directors say that. Like, they should never say they're going to be done with a role until after the movie comes out. Let me see the movie first, and then tell me what's going to happen in the future. Because when you tell me before that you're done, like, it definitely makes you kind of not expect certain things or expect certain things when the movie actually releases. But I don't expect to see Gamora again, at least not for a while, if we ever do see her again. Mantis, so she left, so it makes me think probably not. And then of course you still have Drax and Nebula, and I guess they're technically part of the Guardians still. Like, I don't know, it's really weird how the Guardians works now, to be honest. I'm not sure how it's gonna go in the future. I'm not expecting to see a James Gunn Guardians film for sure. I think it's definitely possible we'll get a Guardians film, maybe, especially if this movie does really good. I think the more likely chance is that we get a Star-Lord solo project, and then we probably get them in Avengers, Secret Wars, or maybe other projects. They'll just kind of throw them in different projects here and there, because there's some characters that they do that with where they don't really have their own movies. Like, I mean, Hulk's a good example. He doesn't have his own movies anymore. He just kind of gets thrown in projects here and there wherever it's convenient, and I'm sure they might do that with the Guardians again. Like, I think it'd be pretty cool, actually, if they kind of took each of the Guardians and every now and then just, like, put one of them in a film. If it made sense, of course. Don't just throw them in there just to have a cameo. Obviously, make it make sense, but if there's certain places where it would make sense, why not do it? I think it'd be cool. I mean, Love and Thunder, they were only in it for like 5 minutes, but they fit in the beginning there. It was completely fine and it made sense, so that was cool. That is gonna do it for this video. I don't really have anything else to talk about when it comes to spoilers, so let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. I definitely love this movie. Like I said in my main review, this movie is one of the best MCU films. I don't think it's better than Infinity War or Endgame. I also don't think it's better than Civil War. Probably not better than Spider-Man No Way Home either. I'm like, it's kind of close, but I don't think it's better than that. And I think it's very close with Guardians of the Galaxy 1, but I'm not sure if I like it more than it yet. Right now, I'm gonna say it probably is better, but it's very, very close. Still, it's one of the best MCU films. It's one of the best comic book movies at this point. Very glad it turned out as good as it was. I didn't really have much criticism, as you can see in my full review, but I had that one thing to say, which I won't say here because you gotta go watch that video to find out. I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you all for watching. Peace out.